you are wondering, else you wouldn't have clicked the stream, you are wondering why your project will never be finished, like I wrote there at the top, okay? And if you are done starting projects that you will never finish, then this is the perfect topic for you, okay? Because when we look through many of the recent concepts that I've seen on r/game ideas or the prototypes that have been shown on r/game dev, we find, and with that I mean I find, that 90% of them have something in common. Namely, that they were all started in the same way, which will eventually lead to them never being finished. No matter how promising they look, right? And to be completely honest, I think 90% is a lowball figure. I think a higher percentage of projects never get finished. And if you are tired of being a part of this majority and want to learn how to give your project the perfect start so that you can actually finish it, and I am talking about game projects here, so everyone that's looking for non-game project advice, I can give you advice on that later, but for now, game projects. So if you want to learn how you can actually create projects that you will actually finish, I welcome you to this game dev topic, right? So, for the video, my name's Christopher. For those that don't know me, welcome to the channel. I make videos that give you insights into the game development process and how you can become a better game developer. And I also have a website where I can support your game through one-on-one support. It's www.gamedevtopics.com, okay? It says it's not secure. It's because I can't figure out the SSL, and I'm an idiot, so I'll figure that out ASAP, but it's safe, I promise. You can trust me. Random dude on the internet, you can trust me. So today we're looking into the issue of how most projects are started, what that means for their chance at finishing a project. I should type along, I need to stop forgetting that. How are most projects started? What this means for your chances at releasing the game. Yeah, I know, there's so many things I gotta set up, yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things you gotta set up for yourself, but we'll get into that, what it means for finishing your project, and how can you start a project that you can actually finish. Right? And when looking into that last one, we're gonna talk about the X meets Y technique, and we're gonna talk about the MDA model, and we're gonna talk about core lips, but it's not explicitly written down. Okay, so let's dive into that game dev topic, okay? Most projects, right, I'm just going to copy paste this because I am a little lazy. Most projects start the exact same way. They start by having a desire to create something that either isn't on the market yet, or something that they've recently played, which they would like to make as well, right? And the mentality behind this isn't wrong, right? It's simply just excitement, right? People are excited to make something that they enjoy, or something where they think they can make a lot of money because it's not on the market yet, okay? So the two ways, there's two more, but there's two ways. It's not on the market yet, it's not on the market yet, and they played something recently. And want to make it themselves, right? The mentality behind it isn't bad, like I said. It's not a bad mentality. Behind this isn't bad, but it is misplaced excitement. I'm going to call it that. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. Now, on top of that, because this severely impacts your chance of releasing, but on top of it, there's two more ways, right? And I think these are the main culprits, okay? So the first one is starting with a story as your basis. Now, what I'm talking about here, I'm not going to write this out, but I have written it out in my script. What I'm talking about here is something along the lines of, and I promise I wrote this myself, I didn't steal it from the plenty of examples that are out there. They'll start with a story as basis, and they'll say something like, in the year 1888, a young man named Connor McBride was just starting out his life, and all of a sudden, blah, 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 right? The second thing is starting with just a genre. Starting with just a genre, right? And this is a really big one, saying something like, this open world game. Now, besides the fact that open world is not a genre, it's not. It is simply a sub-aspect of adventure games. Yeah, those two ways are additional ways in which projects are started, which just cause them to never be finished. Okay. Now, again, the mentality behind this is also excitement, but it just shows a lack of experience, which again is fine because you can gain experience, you can learn more, right? It's just lack of experience and a severe misunderstanding of the game development process, right? So when you start your project this way, not all hope is lost. There are projects that I've seen that started this way, which ended up releasing and becoming mediocre, successful type things, and so it is possible. However, to really nail the coffin shut, what people do, to nail the coffin shut, people start in any of the above ways, and then instantly jump into the engine to make stuff. Or they jump into Blender to blend stuff, right? And when you do that, right, when you do that on top of the start, on top of the different starts that I just mentioned, your chances of finishing the project essentially become zero, right? It's not happening, right? If you do this, your chance of finishing the project essentially becomes zero. 0.1. There's still a chance, but it's tiny. Let's make it 0.01. There you go. Now you might be wondering, okay, but why? And maybe you can already deduce some of the ways in which this might affect your chances. But I want to dive really deep in it because I don't just want to leave it to your own imagination. I want to show you. So how does this affect your chances of finishing the game? Finishing and releasing the game. Well, in the shortest possible answer, you are starting without a concept. Now, for those of you that have been with me for longer, right, and for longer I mean 4 weeks now. I know, incredible. It's 1 month today since we started, so celebration time. You're starting without a concept, and we talked about this in the very first stream, and we talked about some ways to fix that, but today we're going really, really deep into how to fix that, how to fix it properly, right? So that's going to be the main core of this subject. Because when you mix genres, or when you start with a story, that is not a game concept on its own, right? It needs quite a few more elements before you can actually open up the engine and start working on your concept. And in a moment we are going to discuss exactly what elements you're missing and how to build that up. But first I want to go even a level deeper. When you start your project in the aforementioned ways and then dive into an engine, you're actually working against yourself, right? You are actively taking something very vague and then trying to define it by making it, right? Imagine, some of you might be able to imagine this. Imagine buying a canvas, right? Buying some paint, and saying, I am gonna paint nature, right? You're super excited, right? Because you love nature, and you love paintings that depict nature, right? And so you have bought the canvas, you have bought the paint, and you have determined for yourself, okay, this concept, this idea, is that I'm going to paint nature. And then the next thing you do, you start painting. Now, is there a chance that you will actually paint something half decent? Maybe, probably. There is probably a chance that you do that. However, don't you think that you are making this so much harder for yourself and actually really increasing the chances of creating something that is not clear, not pretty, not coherent in any way? Right? Don't you think there's a much bigger chance of you doing that to yourself than anything else? So that means, right? If you can relate to this in any way, and you know, apply this to anything. Apply this to making music. Apply this to any creative process, right? If you do this, you are making life 10 times, 100 times harder for yourself, and you're making your projects a lot more likely to never ever finish or to never ever even release, right? So let's define how you do this, okay? Because that is now the main goal here. And I do want to mention again, just as a quick in between, so also I can catch my breath, that before we continue on to the most important part of this game dev topic, which is defining how you make one of these concepts and really going into detail on it, if you want this kind of advice for your game specifically, or for your project specifically, go to www.gamedevtopics.com or join the Discord. I think the Discord is below the Twitch page. I think I put it there. You can get like guidance sessions, and we have one later today in this stream, right? So someone already signed up, and we're gonna look at their game and their store page. Yeah, you can basically get one-on-one feedback either publicly through Twitch, like the person has done that we're looking at today, or in private, which is just like a one-on-one either Discord call or like a Google Meets call or something, and beforehand I'll look through your game, and then we can discuss the feedback and kind of see where you want it to go with stuff. Okay, so definitely do that if you think it'd be helpful for you. Okay, so continuing on, right, we start with the X meets Y technique. Now, some of you may have already heard about this. It's something that is very often applied in many different creative processes, also for film and theater, but probably also for drawing and painting and many other kinds of creative things. But in games, it is also something we use quite a bit. Because before you work out your game on paper, you first have to know how to come up with somewhat decent concepts, because if it goes wrong at that stage, then it doesn't matter what you do after that. Your basis is wrong, right? Or not as well thought out as it should be. So for me personally, I really like to use the X meets Y technique because it's incredibly simple to use and really easy to understand. So if we take a look at how this works, we simply take two things, an X and a Y, and we combine them, right? So if we start at something a little vague, right, and we're going to go more defined as we go along. If I say X meets Y, for my game concept, I'm going to say dinosaurs with lasers. I surprised myself with my capabilities. Dinosaurs with lasers. So this is a very thematic X meets Y, right? Because there's no real gameplay implications there right from the start, but we have determined which theme we're going for, right? We've determined that it's dinosaurs with lasers, and in this case, you could think to yourselves, okay, dinosaurs with lasers, okay. How am I gonna make maybe like a hack and slash, right? Where many different types of dinosaurs are wielding different types of lasers, you know, and you can kind of build on that from there, right? But the trick here is to take something really bare bones like this, and define it further in terms of the core loop. And we're going to speak about the core loop more later. But let's first look at another example, something that's a bit more defined, right? So if I say Beat Saber meets platforming. Now, for those of you that know what Beat Saber is, for those of you that, for those of you that don't know what Beat Saber is, it's a rhythm-based VR game where you're slashing blocks that are flying at you on the rhythm of the music. It's a really cool game. It's very successful. But if we have that and then include platforming, we could say something like, when combining the popular VR game Beat Saber and the platform genre, that you're making a rhythm-based platformer where players not only have to jump on the right rhythm, but also jump on the right platforms to make sure they hit the right notes, right? And in this case, you can start to see that by using this technique, you're providing yourself with a lot of information, right? Because you can very easily define your gameplay based on the combination that we've made here, right? And with dinosaurs and lasers, that's much harder, but for Beat Saber and platforming, it's a combination that works really well, right? Or could work really well. We don't know. No one's tried it yet. Not to my knowledge, anyway. But this is merely the start, because now Now we're getting into the big boy science, okay? And I remember having quite a bit of difficulty with this when I first learned about it a few years ago. But I'm gonna try my absolute best to explain it, and then afterwards, after we've completed the whole topic, we can ask questions and kind of do it back and forth. So, because now we look at the MDA model, right? Because that's right, when you're developing games and inherently get into game design, which is not art. I have to keep telling people this. It's not art. I'm not drawing stuff. I am designing the rules of the game. You also have to start looking at the MDA model, which was a model developed by 3 professors back in 2001, I believe, specifically meant for the game development industry. And if you Google the MDA model for games, you will automatically find the original resource. It's a PDF. It's out there. If I can find the link, I'll share it somewhere. I'll share it in Discord. Yeah, I'll do that. But once you have a vague idea of what your concept could be, you need to take a look at something called the MDA model, right? Like I said. It's a model that's super widely used in the AAA industry, and it's being taught at many of the best game development educations, right? So what is it? It is a simple system that allows you to easily define your game concept in more detail, and it stands for mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, right? MDA, right? Mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics. The mechanics are, they describe the particular, I have it written down here for my own remembrance, particular component of the game at the, I need to type, at the level of data representation, and algorithms. Now, that is very complicated, so you could also see this as the rules, right? You could very much see it as that. Asa, you make a good point, but we'll get into that afterwards. Then your dynamics, right? Your dynamics describe the runtime behavior of the mechanics acting on player inputs and each other's outputs over time. Okay, so basically, the things that we perceive we're doing based on what we're putting in through the controller, and what the game is giving back to us as a response, right, based on our input. Then the aesthetics, and again, I'll go into more detail in a second, also using examples. Don't worry if this is getting vague. I understand, don't worry. Your aesthetics describe the emotional response evoked in the player when she interacts with the game system, right? And I do like to note, when we say aesthetics, we do not mean visual or narrative aesthetics, okay? For the sake of game design, when we're talking about visuals or narrative, we're talking about thematics, right? Not aesthetics, because they're different things. Now, as a game developer, what you ultimately want to do is create mechanics and dynamics that'll support the aesthetic, the emotional response that you are trying to get out of players, right? When we look at a game like Silent Hill, for example, there's a certain level of fear that they wanted to evoke from the player. There's a certain level of self-discovery. There's a certain level of expression as well. There's a certain level of challenge, certain level of narrative that they wanted to evoke from the player. So what they did was they took one of the 8 very well-defined aesthetics, because there is a list. I'm going to copy-paste that in a second, because I think it's very important to know these. And they kind of said, okay, these are the aesthetics we want to focus on. Let's make dynamics and mechanics that support that aesthetic, right? It's also a very good test case. It's also very good to use it in your testing process. So, which 8 aesthetics are there? These ones, right? So the first one, sensation, games as a sense pleasure. Second one, fantasy, games as make-believe. The third one, narrative, games as drama. The fourth one, challenge, games as an obstacle course. The fifth one, fellowship, games as a social framework. The sixth one, discovery, games as uncharted territory. The seventh one, expression, games as self-discovery, like I mentioned with Silent Hill. And the 8th one, submission, games as a pastime, right? So if I take all of this, and this is the part where kind of like the clicking moment might happen, where you're like, oh right, that's how it's used. If it's not, don't worry, it takes time. This kind of stuff is not easily understood, and it can take some time to understand the use of these things. So if we apply this to something, let's say something pretty easy, Super Mario Brothers, that is a pretty easy example, right? If we apply it to Super Mario Brothers and we look at the mechanics there, right? Feel free to participate in chat, but I am going to just keep going. So the mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics of Super Mario Brother. The mechanics are jumping and running, right? Data representation, the rules of the game, right? The things the player has control over. And I mean in terms of inputs, not in terms of what they think they're doing. Jumping and running, okay? Those are the only two things from the original Super Mario Brothers that are mechanics. In terms of dynamics, we're looking at killing enemies, collecting coins, and completing levels. These are the dynamics that are created based on the mechanics, the input the player gives into the game, the jumping and the running, and the response from the game, which is fed back to the player, right? So when the player jumps on top of a Goomba, the response that the player gets is that they've killed an enemy, right? So that's a dynamic that's created. Then going a level up in aesthetics, we know that we're gonna skip this song because that's the one with the annoying sound. With the aesthetics, we're looking for Super Mario Brothers. We're looking at probably number 4, challenge, right? Games as an obstacle course. I think we can all agree that the levels in Super Mario are obstacle courses in many ways. We're looking at number 6, discovery, right? Games as uncharted territory. Every time you go to a new world, it's the same thing again. It's the uncharted territory. It's what you have to discover. And we're looking at number 2, fantasy, right? Games as make-believe, right? The whole world around Super Mario Brothers is make-believe 100% of the time. So we know, looking at this, we know that this applies to Super Mario Brothers. Now, I know that mechanics and dynamics, those are the relatively easy parts to understand. It's aesthetics that most people have trouble with, including myself. So applying this to another game. And in the meantime, chat, give me a game you want me to do this on, right? So I can give you another example, and it's something that I haven't prepared, so it shows you that this stuff is real. I'm not just cherry picking cases that work for me. So when we look at the aesthetics of The Sims, right? I should say The Sims, I'm not some kind of cannibal. We know that in The Sims, we could say number 3, narrative. Right, games as a drama, because you're constantly creating your own narrative within The Sims. We could say fellowship, number 5, right? Fellowship, because ultimately it is a social framework in the sense that the NPCs you're interacting with all have their own social desires, right? And so you have to work together with them or work against them in order to create the social responses that you want. So we know fellowship. And we know which other one could fit here. Expression. I think expression fits quite well here. Games as self-discovery. How many times, and people need to be honest here, how many times have you created a character in The Sims that looks suspiciously like you? Or has traits suspiciously like you? Or the best version of you, right? Whatever that is in your head. I'm going to skip this one again because I feel like those are definitely copyrighted. So for The Sims, we've got narrative, fellowship, and expression. So we see that this applies to many different games. Does anyone want to give me a game in chat? Something to analyze real quick before I move on? We know that in GTA 5, the mechanics, how can I best describe these? We've got movement, right? We're just going to group them up like that. We've got combat. I'm going to group them up like that because it's shooting and melee together. We've got driving, right? Driving, flying, etc. What else do we have? Just mechanics. Not much else. I think those are the things. Yeah, those are the things. Okay, so the dynamics that are created based on these mechanics are completing missions, right? And I think we can actually go more granular with that. We could say killing targets from missions, finishing races, right? Those are things you can do. You can customize your equipment. This includes cars and everything because it's too much to write out. You can find and complete stories based on these things. Those are the main ones for now. Yeah, those are the main ones for now. Then in terms of aesthetics, right, because we got to apply that. In terms of aesthetics, we have, for GTA 5, we've got, we definitely have fantasy, absolutely fantasy, games just make-believe. We've got narrative. Narrative is a big one. Narrative. I should keep my notation still the same. We've got narrative. We've got. Not challenge, not fellowship. There's no fellowship in GTA 5 Online. We all know this. Discovery maybe, but it's not as big of a one. Self-discovery, not really. If you are self-discovering through GTA 5, you've got a few problems. Yeah, and I'd say number one, sensation, a sense pleasure. So when we look at GTA 5, we know that from the player's perspective, they're living in this fantasy-ish world where they can go through certain narratives to have sensational things happening and to feel sensational doing a lot of these things. Griefing players is definitely not one of the sensational things. But we know that these aesthetics are made or are experienced because of the dynamics of killing targets for missions, finishing races, customizing your equipment, and finding and completing stories, right? And we know that those things are created through the movement, the combat, and the driving that's in the game, right? So this shows you can apply this to any game, and you should apply this to your own game. Because, and this is where the kicker comes in, players recognize this MDA model as well. They don't realize it, but they do. Because players experience the aesthetic that sets the tone of the game, which is created by the dynamics they themselves can observe, right? The killing targets, finishing races, etc., which in turn are created due to the mechanics that the player has some control over, right? So when you think about it like this, and when you know that players instinctively, without realizing it, recognize this model and recognize when a game doesn't follow the model, right? Because they'll say, this game is bad, because they feel like it's missing something. When you realize this, I want you to take away, if there's anything you're taking away from today, I want it to be this. When developing game concepts, you have to look at it from the perspective of your player. Now I can hear you say, well, duh, of course I have to look at it from the perspective of the player. But are you? Because when you do this, you are focusing on experience-based design, right? You are focusing on, okay, which aesthetic do I want my players to experience whilst they're playing my game? Based on what that is, based on the answer on that question, you will be able to determine, okay, which dynamics and which mechanics support that aesthetic, right? Doing this will also help you that if you do release your game, it'll help you avoid a problem where you're creating mechanics and dynamics and stuff, and you're kind of leaving the aesthetics as is, or as whatever they become. You are avoiding a problem where you put the game into players' hands or in testers' hands, and they say to you, oh, I was really scared during this section. And you're thinking to yourself, wait, what? That's not what I meant to have happened at all. Or vice versa, if you're making a horror game. I was totally not scared. Was I supposed to be scared here and there? And you're thinking to yourself, God, yes, of course you were, but why not, right? It's because you aren't focused on experience-based game design, okay? The opposite of this, the opposite of experience-based game design is feature. I'm going to put on a new line. Feature-based game design, okay? This is when you are saying, oh, I want to have guns, and I want to have checkpoints, and I want to have it be like a bullet hell, and I want to, I don't know, do what Enter the Gungeon did or something, I don't know. Stuff like that. That's what you're saying at that point. And this could turn out okay, but the chance of that happening is very small, okay? So when you are developing your game concept, focus on the experience. Focus on which aesthetic you want to create. And remember, there's 8 of them really well defined, right? Sensation, fantasy, narrative, challenge, fellowship, discovery, expression, and submission. Okay? Focus on that, because it'll save you so much time and effort. Okay? I've completely gone off script, but it's fine. I've gone rogue, and it's okay. But I do want to add a side note here. Massive side note. This is merely a basic summary of what the MDA model entails. There is so much more information here that it would take me 2 hours to get through just the MDA model, okay? So I'm going to make a separate video on it, and that video will come up in the foreseeable future, or maybe in another stream we can take a deeper look at this. But I want you to know that this is a pretty inclusive summary that'll help you make better games, okay? So know that. But again, I'll post a link to the original resource in the Discord channel, and then you can already look at it there. But yeah, we'll talk about this more in the future. So now we get to the last step. Okay, we have 1 done the X meets Y technique, right, to create some good basis on what our game should be, and then 2, we have looked at the MDA model and we've filled it in for our game, okay, for what we want it to be. And we've started at aesthetics, where we know which aesthetic we want to evoke from the player, and we have then based dynamics and mechanics on that aesthetic, right? But that leaves step number 3, right? Because we've got step 3, which is creating a core loop, right? This sounds a lot easier than it is, because it's not easy, because if it was easy, then people would get it right all the time, and they don't, so. When you have applied your game concept to the MDA model, and you actually have something a bit more fleshed out, you can actually start looking at creating a loop, a core loop of your game. And this is the final step towards creating a game concept that you can actually finish and release, right? Rather than starting working on another project that you'll never release. So when looking at your core loop, we have to understand which actions the players are taking to constantly progress in the game, right? Core loop equals game progression, right? Or is very closely related anyway. So when we look at this for a game, let's say, oh, one of my favorites of all time, Roller Coaster Tycoon, we know that for that game, the core loop goes something like this. I know this from the top of my head because I have played this game to death ever since I was like 5. So you build attractions, right? Then you make more money. You make the park more attractive, and then you repeat. That's the core loop, right? If you keep doing that, you will at some point win the game, right? Whenever certain criteria are met, right? When we look at this for something completely different, also a game that I like quite a bit, Call of Duty Zombies, specifically zombies. I don't like anything else, but I like zombies. We know that the core loop for this is to kill zombies, right? To get points, to buy weapons, / open more rooms, to then repeat that until eventually we die because we fucked up a train somewhere, right? Now, one more example. when we look at this for Minecraft, this is a questionable example, but it's a good one. We know that one of the core loops, because it has multiple, one of the core loops is find materials, craft tools, find better materials, defeat monsters. God, it's very expensive. Defeat monsters, find even better materials, craft even better tools. Oh god, better tools, which then repeats. Right, this is one of the core loops in Minecraft, and I'm gonna do a deep dive in Minecraft because it's a very interesting game design case. Because Minecraft is a special case where the core loop gets changed based on the playstyle of the player and the goal that they've established for themselves, okay? But again, different video. So when we look at these three games and we see their core loops, the core loop is essentially a summary of the goals and actions that the player takes in order to progress in the game, right? And the important thing here is that this has to continue in a loop to make sure the game keeps going, right? If the player comes to a point where they leave the loop, it means they've either won or lost the game. There is nothing else. There is nothing else except if the player leaves the loop to enter a different loop. That is okay. Then it's fine. But if that doesn't happen, then the player has either won or lost the game. Okay? Keep that in mind. So try setting this up for your own game concept so that you get a clear idea of how players progress through your game. But remember, this is merely a summary of how players progress, and this should be a moment where in your own mind you're spawning more questions like how quickly players progress, which challenges will they meet that's going to try to disrupt that core loop and either bring them to that lose or that win state. You know, those questions should then come up, okay? And I want to write it down here as well. When the player leaves the loop and they don't enter a different loop, they have either lost or won the game. There is no other option, right? Well, I say that, but technically speaking, the player could just Alt F4 the game and quit it entirely, and then they wouldn't have lost or won the game, I guess, but, you know, edge case. So, if you, because we got to conclude this now, because there's something very interesting that's about to happen in a second. If you want to stop being like most game developers, who start their development journey by diving into the engine way too quickly, after thinking of only like a half-baked narrative mixed with a weird fixation on open world, which will only lead to games not being finished, then you have to, well, you should try and use the X meets Y technique for the basis of your concept, then fleshing it out through the MDA model, after which you can also create a core loop to really make it a nice rounded package before you even jump into the engine. Because if you do those things and then you jump into the engine, there's so much you've already defined for yourself that you can work in a much more focused way, which leads to early results, which leads to more progress, more motivation, more progress, to eventually releasing your game. Okay? And with that, your chances of creating something that you can actually release will simply increase exponentially. So, based on that, I hope that you thought to yourselves, wow, this was a very interesting topic, and I hope that the people in the stream didn't feel too bullied. It's not my intention. I'm just here to spread the truth. No, I'm here to spread my experience in these things, and what I see that just it dissuades so many people of going into game development or continuing game development, and I think that's a real shame because it is a beautiful craft that anyone should have the chance of experiencing. Okay. So, and if you think to yourself, because I gotta do this because I wrote it down, if you think to yourself, wow, I would love to talk about more of these kinds of topics, or this topic in particular, then I would highly recommend joining the brand new Game Dev Topics Discord server through the link in chat, which I'll put in a second, or the link on the Twitch page is there, or if you're watching this as video, the link in the description down below. Okay, you can chat to me, you can chat to other developers, and we can have a nice big discussion on how to make you, or to help you make the most successful games you can possibly make. Okay, so thank you very much for watching to this Game Dev Topics. We're going to continue on stream with another aspect for those in the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Ring the bell, slap the subscribe button if you think I earned it. If not, that's all cool. And we'll see you next time. Okay?